All right, here we go. All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We're going to give it another couple of minutes just to let everybody come in, settle in, and then we will get started.
I'm seeing how many friends of ours we have on here.
I was going to say shout out to my mom, Eric and
I know, Mama Ammerman.
Yeah.
Melissa Braverman, very close friend of ours back in going through Columbia. One of my favorite people.
All right, so I think we can get started. Thank you all so much once again for joining us today. My name is John. I'm an assistant director of admissions here at Columbia Journalism School, and I have the immense pleasure of being joined by Eric Salat and Lisa Ammerman, who are both alums of our Master of Science program. They're here to talk about their new docuseries, their new episodic podcast docuseries, Drafted, which is incredible. I'm going to put the link in the chat in just a moment so you can all start listening to it as well. And we're going to have a conversation about that, talk about careers in both audio, television journalism, just staying afloat in this crazy business. But before we do that, I would just like to allow our guests to introduce themselves. So Lisa, we'll start with you.
Sure. Thanks, John. I'm Lisa Ammerman. I am a partner and executive producer at Treefort Media, which is in Los Angeles. It's an audio first production company, and we produced Drafted that came out, I think it came out about, sorry, I'm sitting outside, about 6-7 weeks ago. And as John said, it's an audio series about the 2020 NFL draft. And I'm going to kick it over to Eric Salat, who, just full disclosure, is also my husband.
Yes, I'm about 100 feet from Lisa, inside the house, so we don't get echoing any echo. Yeah, my name's Eric Salat. I come out of news. I worked for ABC News right after Columbia, and worked in. Then when we came out here to Los Angeles, started working in long-form television, long-form documentaries with. I produced many hours for Discovery Channel, History Channel, produced some biographies for Bloomberg, and then found myself in I embedded documentaries for the NFL Network and also Esquire. I was one of the showrunners for Friday Night Tykes. So this is the first podcast series that I've produced and run and written. So, we can dive into the challenges and the excitement of what we learned.
Awesome. Thank you both so much for joining us today. Quick reminder for our participants, we are recording this, so if you don't want to be seen in any sort of way, protecting privacy, feel free to turn off your camera. No problem at all, but we will be recording this and sharing this with people who weren't able to attend the event later on. So just letting everyone know. I want to get started by talking about this amazing podcast. Can you both talk about, what Drafted is about and how you decided to tell this story, and specifically why you decided that audio was the way to tell it? We'll begin with Eric, and then Lisa can follow up.
Sure. Yeah, so Drafted is, it's an embedded podcast documentary, and we followed 8 elite college football players going through the 2020 NFL draft. In this, as we all know, a very unprecedented time. These were young men who worked hard and focused on their craft. The sport is brutal, but they consider the techniques that they learn as a craft. And we followed them on the cusp of fulfilling their dream, a dream that they've had since some were little boys, diving into their hopes, their fears, before what I call, we essentially caught them in the calm before the storm. They've all been well-known student athletes in college, with a lot of notoriety, and they've gotten a lot of, they're on TV every Saturday, but they're going into the NFL machine, which comes with it fame and scrutiny that they've never experienced before. So that was very interesting to us. We were catching them right before they were thrust into this world of the NFL, where you can be a hero one week and someone who receives 1,000 hateful tweets the next if you miss a tackle or throw an interception. So Lisa, why don't you go into why we decided to tell the story and
Sure.
why audio was the right medium?
Yeah. So, I mean, as Eric was saying, sort of picking up on that, audio was the only medium that the players and Clutch Sports Agency, who was our partner in this, wanted to use to tell the story. They felt like it really gave an opportunity to get these guys raw, unfiltered, really honest. As Eric was saying, this happened during the pandemic. So we sent these guys audio kits. They recorded themselves. Eric would send them, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it was like sort of a list of, like, you would think of a shot list for a video documentary. He shot them an audio list, sent them an audio list and said, get yourself working out, talking to your families, and sort of all those kinds of things. And so it was always conceptualized only as audio. And as a result, Eric and a team of like 2 or 3 other people had 200 plus hours of audio to start to sift through within a couple of weeks. So yeah, that's where being a married couple sort of became, he was like, oh my God. And so I was able to see it firsthand, like to see, and hear how much they were going through. And when I had time, I would dive into, and sort of, he would give me an interview and say, find something good in here. So that was really, I mean, I couldn't get over the kinds of stories that we were getting back with just the audio. It was pretty fascinating.
That's amazing. And that's a tremendous amount of content to have to really kind of analyze and piece together. What were some of the challenges that you experienced throughout the process? And then ultimately, how did you end up structuring the episodes from week to week with all of this content?
Sure. When I'm doing embedded documentaries with ABC News, we were embedded with the NYPD for almost a little under 2 years. When I'm doing an embedded documentary with athletes, I did something called Football Town up in Alaska, where we followed a high school team throughout their season, playing football at the top of the world. You're there, you're able to know what story beats you're getting. You're there in the scene. We didn't have that luxury. We could not. There was no producerial presence with our guys, and so making sure that they did what that we set out to do, and getting all the story beats that we wanted was, as a producer, we're control freaks, and I want to know exactly what we're going to be getting. It was kind of a prayer. I was praying every day that we were going to get the material that we needed, and I would text with these guys. These guys communicate mainly via text. They're 21, 22-year-olds. So I check in with them every day, just making sure they're getting what we need, and some of them embraced the process and really took it to heart and felt like this was a therapy session for them before they were going during this incredible time in their life. They're on the cusp of reaching a dream that they had. They want this so badly that they embrace this as a moment that they could just tell us what they were feeling at the time. Their relationships to their father, how much expectations they were receiving from their fathers, and what if they weren't going to go in the first 5 or 6 rounds? What would that mean to them in terms of how they were viewed by their father, things like that that were really interesting. So luckily enough, we did get a lot of fantastic material. We can talk about process a little bit now. So 200 plus hours came in. My process is to take each individual athlete, whoever you're covering, and break down their stories individually. And then that way we can figure out what story beats we have by topic and how we could do the weave. And I knew that there were certain parts of the series that were very obvious to me in terms of how we were going to structure it out. I knew that probably episode 7 or 8, we're going to start with the draft, and that was going to be the first few rounds. So once we got to the draft, that was kind of a self-explanatory. But I wanted to, beyond the intros, figure out some themes. And once we were able to look at the topics and the emotion and some of the conflict that was coming in, then we were able to break it out thematically. You know, fathers and sons, relationships that shape the athletes with Mackay and Tremaine in episode 2. That was an obvious one to me. We decided to only put 3 players in the first episode because we didn't want to front load it with a lot of, we're introducing the series, we're introducing some of the athletes and some of the satellite characters, coaches and family members. That's a lot to put into 35 minutes. So we decided, let's just have 3. Let's have our 2 masters of the universe in Chase and Jeff Okuda, who are probably going to go top 5, and then somebody who is really going to tug at your heartstrings. And we went through a number of different characters, and we decided on Yisang. Yisang was our only undrafted player, but his story is fantastic. Son of Nigerian immigrants, his relationship to his autistic brother. We knew that somebody, an audience is really going to connect to him, the emotion of what he's going through. And so those were 3 obvious people that we were going to introduce the whole series with. They embody what the series is about: working hard, dreams, overcoming obstacles, and then fathers and sons and the relationships that shape the athlete in 2. And then obstacles that players face to arrive on draft day, overcoming an injury or coaches who didn't understand them. We knew that was going to be in 3. And then challenges they faced and overcome in 4. And so I think about these things thematically and then do the weave, the story weave with our various characters. I know that was a long-winded answer, but I thought that was important to kind of convey.
Definitely important. I feel like everyone's getting a master class in podcasting. Lisa, what you can.
Well, I just wanted to I wanted to add on to what Eric was saying. In episode 1, with Yisang, for example, you know, when you're doing these long form stories like this and you're really trying to figure out like what makes each character compelling, what really spoke to me in that episode, I don't know if a lot of you guys have had a chance to listen to it yet, but as Eric said, his brother has autism, and you don't hear from his brother. You hear him in the background, but then throughout the series, whenever you sort of touch base with Yisang and Yisang's story, that character of his brother, I could feel the weight of that on every answer, or many of the answers really, that he said, or how he approached his career and how he approached, you know, sort of everything about his life. His brother's diagnosis has affected not just him, but his entire family. And you hear that very strongly throughout the whole series, even though a lot of it's, you know, not super overt or spoken about all the time, which I thought was really fascinating.
The character development. I'm so sorry.
No, sorry. And just to add on to that, Lisa, and I remember when we were doing the initial pre-interview with Yisang, in this type of medium, and also with some of the TV projects I've been working on, you know, you want to get clean audio, you want to get that perfect interview, but sometimes hearing something in the background and having the person break that fourth wall a little bit and discuss what we're hearing is so important. It makes it real. It's not, we're not glossing over anything. So when I was talking to Isang and I heard his brother in the background, I didn't want to stop down and say, you know what, do you mind moving to another part of the house? I wanted to continue to be in the moment and hear his environment. And I wanted to give it more of a real feel in terms of what he's dealing with every day, living in a small house in a pandemic, and his brother being so close. And actually, to be honest with you, he didn't say, "Hey, do you want to?" He's so used to hearing his brother that he didn't invite me to, "Hey, do you want to move the interview?" He knew that it was going to be part of his story, so he just we just continued on with the interview. So
the character development throughout the podcast is pretty incredible, and it really speaks to the journalistic quality of it. The fact that you found such rich characters and were allowing them to really, express this rich narrative, I think, is really important in journalism, and just makes the podcast just rise above a lot of others that I've heard. And so I encourage everyone to listen to it for a number of reasons, especially for the character development. But another thing we haven't mentioned is actually the omniscient narrator throughout this is Keegan Michael Key. And that was, it was very interesting to hear him in this kind of environment, which was, very much less comedic, and very much, committed to the telling of these stories. What was the process of getting him to essentially be your narrator for this? And how do you decide who should be the narrator for something like a podcast? Like, what qualities do you look for in like a solid narrator? Either of you could begin. I can't imagine what that process is like. So I don't know how you did that.
No, sure. I'll jump in first. So Keegan is a huge sports fan, and we knew that, and Clutch knew that, and then all three of us happened to also be repped by the same talent agency, UTA, and so that was an easy sort of call to make. And because he was such a fan, and his wife, actually, correct me if I'm wrong, Eric, I think his wife used to work for the NFL at one point, so she's also a big fan. So he jumped in, both feet, and I'll turn it over to Eric, but he was also very part of the process, and had a big hand in sort of how he told the story, his part of the story.
Yeah, and Lisa will remember this. It was when I first started the process and the project, and I learned that Keegan was going to be the narrator. He wanted to do this. I knew I'm a huge Dan Patrick show fan, and I've known that he's been on the Dan Patrick show a few different times, and he's really knowledgeable about all things football. He's a huge Detroit Lions fan. He went to Penn State. I knew I could connect to him on the sports level, and we did, and we have. When I initially wrote the trailer VO for this, it had a comedic bent to it. Of course, that's what he's known for, but he's really he's a dramatically trained actor. He just happens to be working in comedy for the most part. So when I sent the script over to him and his wife's also his producing partner, they said, "Hold on, let's change," because this is before I started writing the scripts for the first 2 to 3 episodes. I really want to kind of gauge what the tone was going to be, what he'd like the tone to be. And I was very happy when he said, "Hold on, let's pull back on the comedy. Give me a straight script, and I'll be able to riff here and there with inflections or a line or two." And that was great. That set the tone. He did want more of a Liev Schreiber kind of tone to this, and he embraced how I wrote it, and I was very happy about that. And, so we had to kind of switch gears a little bit. And the first couple episodes, he had a lot of notes on. And, once we kind of got through that process, he trusted me, and 3 through 12 were really, we breezed through them. Really, as soon as that's also when you're working with a talent, a host. Lisa and I have found this is, you're working with a talent or a host. Sometimes they don't want to have any input. Sometimes they do. But once you connect with them and you go through a few episodes with them, and you realize what's important to them, how they'd like the read to be, then it gets easier. And then the trust is gained, and then you can go off, and once I learn what they like, then I can come to a happy medium and then go forward. So
very cool. Thank you. Shifting gears a little bit, we have many people on this who are also prospective students, people who are interested in coming to Columbia. You both are alums. And I was wondering if we could, go back in time and think about, what led you both to apply to Columbia Journalism School, and what your ambitions were at the time, what sealed the deal to apply and ultimately come to the school. Lisa, we'll start with you.
Sure. So I had been out of college a few years, and I had been working in television. I started my career with Bill Moyers at PBS, and doing conversation series and sort of news, long form news series with him, but not necessarily documentaries. And I went from there to conversation series, also the Fred Friendly seminars, which were actually at the time in the basement of the J School. That's where the production offices were. At the same time, Eric was a student. We were already together, but he was a grad student getting his master's first, and I kept looking at his coursework and saying like, oh, this is really interesting. I wonder if I have the guts to go take myself out of the work world and go back to school. And he loved it so much that I applied, and so I went. And it was a great, I was glad that I did. I was at a point in my career where I wanted a change, and I wasn't really sure sort of how best to go about it. So not only sort of the mentors that I found in professors, but also the network of other students who are now colleagues in many times, in many cases. That was invaluable. And for me, taking, I guess it was, I don't know how the program is structured really now. Is it still 10 months? Yeah. Okay. So,
Close.
I mean,
Yeah.
so roughly. So, so that seemed like a doable amount of time to take myself out of the work world for a really intensive 10 months. And I was very glad that I did it. Yeah. So, and so I piggybacked on Eric's success there. Yeah.
And Eric, over to you.
Sure. Yeah, I had a different path than a lot of my colleagues that were in RW1. I was worked on Wall Street for about 6 years at a company called Thompson Financial, and I had been in the bond market, and I didn't like fundamentally what I was doing, and I enjoyed the people. I didn't like the work, and so I moved over and became a reporter for Dow Jones News Wires, and I wrote a comment an hour and some larger thinker pieces, but I really wanted to. Throughout that time, I was a big fan of CNBC, watched Joe Kernan and David Faber on CNBC every day, and of course Jim Cramer and these guys. And I had a dream in the back of my head to become them. I'd love to become a personality that works as a journalist in the financial markets. So that's where I wanted to learn the craft a little bit, and went to Dow Jones News, and I decided that I really wanted to hone my craft and learn how to do this the right way. And so I decided to apply to the J School, and it was a great experience for me to just take myself out of the workforce and kind of learn the theory and learn from this fantastic laboratory of New York City. And I met some fantastic people who are my friends to this day and I've worked with for years. And then that's where I and then after that, I decided my dreams and ambitions of being in front of the camera were a little bit tempered because I love producing so much and writing. I just decided to go the producing route. And then I jumped and got a job at ABC News.
Amazing, amazing. And were there any particular moments or classes, projects, anything that were the most memorable for you?
Sure. I loved national reporting. We took a trip up to New Hampshire for the New Hampshire primary, which was amazing. That was really incredible. So I loved that. And then I also took with Dean Claytel and Jeffrey Tuckman, who were both amazing teachers and mentors, who Eric and I both kept in touch with after school, documentary. And even though I didn't necessarily work in long form documentary for the majority of my career, storytelling is storytelling, and you have to be able to tell a story, whether it's a 2-minute conversation or a 2-hour, long form or a 12 episode drafted podcast. And that was really invaluable. I also wanted to pick up on one other thing that we were talking about before, and that was, all of the people that you meet along the way. Just about a year ago, Eric and I, with our extended family, went to Chile. And I reconnected with a friend who was, another dog went by, I apologize.
No
And a friend who had been a classmate at Columbia. And she's now, I'd like to call her like the Diane Sawyer of Chile, and to sit down with her and talk with her about what was happening there was incredible. Sorry.
Okay, no problem
Sorry.
at all. Yeah, that's life. I have a
This
1-year-old who might be stomping
You were
in
there,
a minute.
Eric. You know what to say.
Yes, this happens once or twice for every Zoom. There's at least 1 or 2 barking incidents.
But yeah,
I love the critical thinking classes with James Carey and Professor Isaacs. It was a way to kind of just take a 30,000 foot view and to what we were doing in terms of our reporting. But I really enjoyed and look forward to those classes. Talking about different incidents throughout journalistic history and learning from them. And that was very important to me as I launched my career at ABC and out here and working for various outlets. But I really enjoyed Harry Moses, the news magazine writing class that I took with Harry Moses. Learning how to work in small broadcast teams of 2 or 3. We covered the AAU basketball system in Manhattan, the pluses and minuses to putting that much pressure on kids at an early age. And my master's project was, and of course, it was the first time that we had ever attempted to do a documentary, because I didn't take the documentary film class. I kind of learned documentary in my professional career through mentors that I had at ABC. Was following 3 actors through the beginning stages of their career. One was a successful actor, but 2, I love my uncle, my father's brother. he was a carpenter for many years, and he had this dream of becoming an actor, and he doesn't act, he does community theater. But if you ask him what he does, he says, I'm an actor. And I love that spirit, especially in New York City, where you have a lot of baristas who will say, I'm an actor. And so I wanted to dive into why they thought that way, and why 0.2% of all actors make it, and why would you dive into this profession, or try to attain this dream where the odds are stacked against you. And I love that, people that go after their dreams, but it's going to be with a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and you may never make it. But so that was a fantastic project. I really enjoyed it.
Amazing. And you both have, mentioned a little bit about your careers, but I would love to hear more about, how your career has evolved since graduating from Columbia University, and if there are any sort of specific skills that you learned that really helped you as you were navigating your careers. And Lisa, we'll start with you.
Sure. So after I graduated, I did go back to a little bit of PBS type stuff for a couple of years. But to be honest, actually, when 9/11 hit, and Eric will get into that when he's talking about his career, I actually shied away from news. Sorry, helicopter. And I wanted to do more. I wanted to do more entertainment. So I sort of made my way to a long time gig for Saturday Night Live. They were doing Broadway Video, which is Lorne Michaels' production company, was partnered with NBC and an independent director to do an adaptation of the Tom Shales book about the first 5 years of Saturday Night Live. And I got really lucky. A friend of a friend, who is actually a neighbor out here now, he introduced me to his friend from college, who was looking for a producer to basically do all the systems, archive, set everything up, basically like a coordinating producer on steroids. And she didn't have that background. So that ended up being a year-long gig. And I kept coming out here because, again, sort of, fate and chance happened. She didn't know how to drive, and she wanted somebody to drive her around Los Angeles on these shoots. And so she was like, I have an offer for you. You can come on every shoot in LA if you don't mind driving me and sharing a room. And I was like, done, fine, easy, no problem. And so that was a great learning experience for me, because I hadn't done that kind of a primetime special like that. It was really high budget, not used to that with PBS type stuff. And it was really my first big dealing with Hollywood talent, which is a whole other sort of muscle that you don't necessarily learn in journalism school. But again, sort of going back to the sort of the beginnings, if you can interview, if you're comfortable, if you can tell a story, those skills, sort of translate all the way across. So that SNL gig brought me out here. I kind of liked what I saw. If you'd asked me 20 years before that if I would ever live in Los Angeles, having been raised in Washington, D.C. and then New York, I would have been like, no way. But it was a very good move for us, because then once we came out here, our daughter was an infant. I still wanted to work. I did Journalism 101, which was casting for Amazing Race and Survivor. And that is literally figuring out whether people are interesting, whether they can actually, their story could carry through, whether or not they're, I don't know how many of you watch those shows, but if it's a Boston lunch lady, she's got to sound like a Boston lunch lady. She can't sound like anything else. And so I would look through tapes, I would get sent around the country. And because of my journalism background, they would give me the most obscure sort of, we need, I don't know, they would just give me the craziest stuff. So I would find those kinds of I find those kinds of roles for them. I did it really until I couldn't do it anymore. I was kind of done with it, and I wanted to go back to something a little bit meatier. And when I did that, I again fell into a role through a friend from high school who had a chance meeting with a producer. Late Late Show with Craig Ferguson was looking for a segment producer, and I didn't have a background in talk television. And I just sort of went in. I didn't even know who Craig Ferguson was. Quite honestly, I had to Google him. And that ignorance probably is actually what helped me get the job. I mean, I knew enough I did my homework, obviously, before I went in. But when I sat down and they asked me who were three people that I thought would be fun late night guests, one of my answers was Justice Antonin Scalia, because I had been seated next to him at a thing I'd done for PBS, and he was wildly funny. He could tell a great story. He was like a real raconteur. And I knew enough about Ferguson to know that he didn't want to just talk to, celebrities, and he, he would want to be challenged in a conversation. And so that's actually what I think got me the job. I lasted there for 7 years. And on that show, I exercised sort of a couple of different muscles. The first was obviously interviewing people on the fly, wherever they were, and turning something around really quickly. I have interviewed everybody from Paris Hilton to Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And in fact, those were in the same week. People would ask me, like, have you interviewed so-and-so? And I would literally have to go back and look through the thousands of people and be like, oh, I actually did. Yes, twice. Because the pace was so fast, and I liked that. But I had never been a booker, and that's a very different skill, but also one that has carried me through. And I'll get to that in a sec. But with that late night show in particular, most late night shows, you're either a booker or a producer. And for this one, that you had to do both, and that made you care so much more about the person you were putting in the seat, because if they didn't do well, I guess would be a diplomatic way of saying it, that postmortem meeting at the end of the show, you just didn't want to go in. You didn't want to hear about why it didn't go well, and so you were very careful. And so those skills, finding the right voices, making sure they can tell a good story, making sure that they're interesting and that they're, I hate to use this buzzword, but it really is true, relatable, was something that then I parlayed into an executive role at CBS. After Ferguson went off the air after 7 years, CBS created a position where they had what was really an Uber booker across the network. So I had to work with everybody from late night to game shows, specials, so Grammys and ACM, American Country Music Awards, all those different kinds of things. Simon and Schuster, at the time CNET, all of those were under the CBS umbrella. And so I was competing with NBC and ABC to figure out how we could get top tier talent to promote whether like Bruce Springsteen wrote an autobiography. So I sat down with the head of the network and the head of marketing and, all the executive producers and said, what can we offer that Fallon and Ellen and, Kimmel and all those guys are not going to be able to compete with? And so that was one that we won. And that was a very different muscle. I did that for 3 years. And then I really missed producing. I missed sort of being in the trenches and having more of a creative outlet. I missed the pace of production, quite honestly. And Kelly Garner, who founded Treefort, was an old friend. Eric and I met him when we first moved out to LA. Eric had done quite a bit of development work for him at different times. He reached out to us, said he had started Treefort and wanted to know if we had some intellectual property around and wanted to produce it. And so I just started talking to him, and then he needed help on his first series, which was about the mysterious death of the actress Natalie Wood. And I came in and helped him upend the last 5 episodes when they got all this new material in, and we clicked. We just got along really well. And so he said, hey, do you want to stay and build this company with me? And I turned to Eric and I was like, I've been a steady employee at CBS for over a decade. How do I go to a startup at this age? We've got a kid in private school. Like, what are we going to do? And he, to his credit, was like, you are enjoying this so much. Try it, do it. Like, take a, risk. And so, thankfully I did. And then, cut to 2 years later, pandemic hits. And then, I bring him in to make what is one of our favorite series that Treefort has ever done. So, Eric, now your turn. Sorry, I went on for so long.
That's no, I do remember that day that we went for coffee with Kelly over in Las Vegas, and that really kind of changed the landscape for your career, because I think it was just the kernel of an idea, and he and you both made it into the company it is today. But looking back on my career, I really feel blessed. Luckily, I've had a career that I've worked on projects that I really enjoy, and Lisa knows I've turned down projects that I knew. I decided, look, if I'm going to take myself away from my family, because a lot of times when I do shoot, I'm away for about 4 to 5 months in some remote part of the country, and my family, Lisa and Sasha, my daughter, can come in and visit me a couple times, or I can come back once. But I really am pretty discerning in terms of what the types of projects that I take, and Lisa and I are in a position to sometimes say no if it's going to take me away for 8 or 9 months. But looking back at my post-Columbia life, when I came out, I started working for Peter Jennings Reporting. I worked on a documentary about Bush and Gore in 2000 and their ties to their fathers, and it was a 2-hour documentary that was setting the table for the election. And then I moved over to the long form unit and worked with some fantastic people. One being Rainey Aronson, who's now the executive producer of Frontline, and Terry Wrong, who's been a stalwart of ABC News for years. He's now has his own company, and some other people who I'm very grateful to have learned from. And we worked on a lot of we would work on long form documentaries, 6-part series, but then we would get plugged into World News Tonight or Good Morning America, some spot news stories. When Enron and WorldCom, when those stories started to, when those two companies started to implode, because I had a background on Wall Street and in the financial world, they took me, and I would produce some stories for Dan Harris, for example. So it was a nice blend of working on a long form project. It's like writing a novel. You've got your novel, and then you've got your reporting day job that you have to do a day story on. So that was a nice balance. I felt like I was in the machinery of spot news, but then I had this fantastic long form crime series that we were working on with the long form unit. And then when I moved out here, I found myself writing biographies. That skill set of writing these series translated into writing a few biographies, one of Larry Ellison and Henry Kravis for Bloomberg. I wrote a 2-hour documentary about Einstein's life during World War I for History Channel. And then post that, I had worked on a couple different series and started show running, which is really the manager of the project. Me as a showrunner, I like to also direct and write. So I get my hands dirty. Some showrunners will just kind of manage the project, but I like to get in there. And I found myself, I'm currently the showrunner for a show called Cold Justice for Oxygen, and it's there. We unravel cold cases and reinvestigate them. We're on hiatus right now, so that gave me some time to do the Drafted podcast. But in the past 5 years, I've found myself doing some embedded documentaries for, like I mentioned, some sports documentaries, one for the NFL Network, one for Esquire, and here and there dabble in sports. And it's a passion of mine. I love, just so happens that the two genres I love to work in are crime and sports. I'm able to do that, which is great, especially now. It was nice to be able to have this outlet to do Drafted with Lisa. First of all, we work well together. Secondly, I love the NFL and I'm passionate about it. And what's nice about covering sports, and I took Sandy, dipping into Columbia, but I took Sandy Padway's sports class, and he's a guy who we all loved, and I wish I'd kept in contact with him the last 5 years or so, but he would always tell us that, hey, look, sports is not what some newspapers say as the toy department. Through sports, use sports as a lens to talk about a number of different issues, to talk about race, talk about social injustice, through the lens of the athlete's eyes. You can peel back the layers of the onion and really dig into motivations, things that people reading the newspaper or watching a documentary on television can relate to. And that's how I kind of view sports. Through sports, you can tell a lot about a community, a lot about a family. I love stories of struggle and how people overcome obstacles. Like, for example, Jeff Okuda, who lost his mom and could have very easily been fetal position in the shower, and said, I'm not going to go on in life. I lost my mom. My mom's been sick most of my life, but he persevered. He had 25 college scholarship offers. He was offered a scholarship from Stanford University. He could have gotten a fantastic education. He got a fantastic education at Ohio State because he said, I'm going to go to Ohio State and learn from some of the best defensive minds in the game. So I feel really grateful that we had a chance to work on Drafted, because we also had a chance, and we can talk about this, Lisa can talk about this in a second, but we decided to dedicate, there's theory and practice when you go into these projects. In theory, we're just going to tell the story of the draft. Well, post-draft, of course, George Floyd happened, the murder of George Floyd, a number of different protests, of course, that were sparked throughout the country. And we decided to dedicate the last episode to Black Lives Matter and give our athletes and the agents that we covered a voice to tell how they feel. Not just tweeting out what they feel, but give them a full hour interview and to give us a sense of how they felt about this moment. I felt like we'd be remiss if we didn't. So that's another reason why we're very proud of this series. It's not just telling a sports story and the story of these athletes' lives, but we were also able to do a little bit, talk about the moment in history as well.
Amazing. That's incredible. Thank you both so much. I'm wondering if you can also touch on just the alumni network, the people that you met at Columbia, and how that's impacted your career post-graduation.
Sure. As I was saying before, we have definitely both kept in touch with people. For example, just recently, I was looking on, there's I forget, it's called like Air Media, I think. And it's for a lot of sound designers and different producers who can do radio and podcasting. I was just sort of looking for something, and I came across a former classmate. So I reached out to her, like, it's been 20 years. Hey, do you remember me? And she instantly was like, oh my God, yeah, so great to hear from you. And she's a professor of journalism now at University of Montana and we reconnected, and now we're working on a project together. She pitched us a great crime story that really, she's taken a sabbatical and she needed a partner because she's basically just a one-man band. So, that that I have to say is really, it's fun to sort of see that all come full circle. And, because Eric and I graduated a year apart, we know a lot of, people between both classes. So we really actually got a double bonus on that. So sorry, Eric could take it.
Yeah, and it's been nice. My class, my RW1 class, and a number of different people from class of '99 have done a lot of different exciting things. I was just emailing with Doolin too yesterday about how he got. I know he's a professor at Columbia, but he also got a Knight Science Fellowship. Very proud of some of the work that my classmates have done. I think there's a trust there. It's interesting when I mentioned the long form unit. I worked with Rainey Aronson, who's 98, in class of '98. Roxana Sherwood, who's heading a rock of ABC News right now. There's the trust factor, I think, and there's the network factor of you've gone through this incredible program. You implicitly trust them in terms of their morals and ethics of how they go about not just life, but their careers. So I have when I see that somebody graduated from the program, I initially I'm just so happy to connect with them, and I know that they have a connection with me, and we're going to have that trust, because when I hire somebody to be a field producer for me or to direct something that I'm not there. I talked about the fact that I'm a control freak. I really need to have a trust. And sometimes I hire people that I've known, for drafted, I've hired a writer that I've worked with for the past 9 years. I have this implicit trust in his abilities. And I do with Columbia grads that I've worked with over the years. Ivan O'Mahony, I got.
He was my year.
Yeah, he was Lisa's year. I think, Lisa, I can't remember how much money we got from. We got a National Science Foundation grant, and along with a little bit of development money from Discovery Science, and I was able to. Another topic that I really enjoy is science, and of course, when I did my Einstein project, I loved diving into physics, and it was a project about internal waves underneath the ocean, and we called the show Wave Hunters with two professors that were from MIT and Woods Hole, and I couldn't go to Australia and off the coast of Taiwan to film something one year with the development money that we had received. So I immediately called Ivan and I said, "Hey, do you have time to spend on this 2.5 week, 3 week project?" And he said, "Sure." And he absolutely nailed it for me. And I'd never worked with him before, but I knew that he was, through Lisa's network, he was just a fantastic mind who loved to problem solve and critically think. And we were working with a Chinese a film group from China, from mainland China, and he absolutely became the leader that we needed out there, and he came back with some fantastic stuff. So I've had some great experiences with our network. A couple people out here in the Columbia SoCal network, I keep close tabs on, and I sometimes will, and what's interesting too, I'll sometimes be developing a project and call somebody and say, "Hey, what do you think?" And I like having that just a group of people who are invested in me, and I'm invested in them, and we can talk. We're not competitive, and we can talk through projects and say, because out here, in this crazy world of freelance producers. Everybody's very competitive. I feel like my Columbia network, we're not competitive. We want each other to thrive and become successful. And I love the fact that I've got 5 or 6 people from the Columbia network that I can throw out, send over a treatment or an idea, talk to an idea, and we can work through and workshop the idea a little bit. And then I can write the treatment having a bigger scope, a kind of a better understanding of the challenges of what I'm getting into. And then I'll write to that. So it's I really am grateful for the people that I've found through the Columbia network.
And I was going to add on to a little bit of that too. You know, when it came to introducing a new project, you know, to the world, we also relied on our Columbia network of contacts because, you know, as we were touching on before, it's really different with a podcast. You know, I can text it to Ivan in Australia and be like, here's the link to episode 1. And that's really powerful. I mean, he can't watch something that's on television here that we've done. So that's actually been really interesting too. And being able to sort of, you know, it's a nice way to reacquaint yourself with, you know, with people that you may have lost touch with, which is really helpful as well.
Amazing, thank you. We are almost at an hour, so thank you so much for being so generous with your time. And you've touched, I have one last final question, and then I will let you go, I promise, but thank you again. You've really touched on, you know, being able to talk to people, critical thinking skills, the kind of attributes that have helped you stay afloat in this industry and have allowed you to navigate in different arenas. They're not specifically journalistic. It could be, you know, something that may be entertainment, but always utilizes your journalistic skills. What are some key attributes and skills that you feel like students should really be developing or that you are looking for when you're looking to bring people onto your team so that our students can kind of absorb that and keep that in mind as they're thinking about their future careers?
Sure. No, I love that question. I mean, as somebody who's done, I mean, both Eric and I have done all those jobs. The most important sort of thing that I learned in my first role as a PA was to try and think for the producer because I wanted to make myself indispensable. And so it was observing, it was asking questions, never being afraid to ask a question. You're better off asking a question than assuming and doing it wrong. And if you find the right person to sort of, for lack of a better way of saying it, really attach yourself to, they're going to help you through that process anyways. They're going to encourage you to ask that question. And if they don't, they may not be the person that you want to sort of stick to because you're not going to necessarily learn everything that you are hoping to build out a career and to build, you know, new skills onto the foundation that you already have. I think that's really valuable. And before I turn it over to Eric, because I have to jump onto another meeting, and if you guys, anybody who is planning on listening to Drafted, it would be really great if you can go on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcast and just tell us what you think of the series, rate it, tell us, because unlike with television, we actually see that feedback. And it's really helpful to know what, you know, you liked or what you wish you heard more of, because when season 2 comes around, that's really helpful for us to know. So we love that. I'm going to jump. Thank you so much. And I'm going to leave Eric to answer for me.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks again,
really
guys.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. And also you can reach out to me. John, I'm totally comfortable if you have my work email and people want to reach out to me, ask me questions, send me a resume. We're always looking for really smart people. So please reach out.
Thank you. I will let them know. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you again. It was a pleasure.
Something that helped me, look, when I got out of Columbia, you know, I had a career. I was a successful reporter coming out of Columbia. I got hired by ABC News, and I said, all right, give me the keys of the car. I'm ready to produce my first 2020. And they said, no. You're going to become a PA, and you're going to learn from some fantastic people. And you're going to sit in that edit room over there, and you are going to absorb. And you're not going to make much money at all. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, what did I get myself into? And I actually had, coming out of Columbia, interesting that we talking about this, I'm just remembering what my options were. I was given the option by Carl Bernstein's company, because remember, it was right before the election of George W., to work on voter.com, which is a Carl Bernstein company, no longer, and live up in Boston and become his assistant managing editor. I decided not to do that, mainly because of Lisa, because I knew I wanted to marry her, so I wanted to stay in New York. And I decided to take this job with ABC News. What was fantastic about that was I found a few mentors. And I said, you know what, I'm going to make the best of this situation. You know, at the time I thought, you know, my skills weren't being utilized as they should be, but I found a few mentors and I learned from them, and I learned how to structure a story. I learned how they were, I observed how they pitched in a meeting, how you have to paint a picture to about the story you'd like to tell, how a pitch is kind of, it's a craft. How you put together a story in the edit room, and that helped me when I had the chance to go out in the field. What are they looking for in the edit room that I need to get in the field? It was the best thing. I look back, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me when I just found my mentors, learned from them for years, and then I got the keys to the car to go out and drive it. I find a lot of people coming out of school now, they want the keys to the car a little bit too quickly. And I'd say, you know what, take a step back, find a mentor, and find out how to do it, how to tell a story in the right way. And the other abilities that I really implore, you know, I like people to have are empathy and trust. Being empathetic to somebody's situation, so that they can trust you. Because when you do that, for example, with Drafted, once these athletes who have an entirely different upbringing than me understood that I'm the ombudsman of they're giving me their story. They're giving me their heartfelt takes on life, their takes on their family, their takes on this crazy next step in their life. And they haven't had it easy. Some of them have not had it easy, but when they realize that, hey, they can trust Eric, me, being the ombudsman of their story, then they embraced it. And they absolutely, you know, it was a video diary. It was like a therapy session for them. And I implore you to do that, to learn the empathy and to learn the trust, and not create a situation where there's any type of tension. Allow the person that you're covering to feel comfortable, and they will give you, or they'll be more inclined to tell their story. You know, that's not always intuitive, you know, but I would say two things that have, you know, beyond the ability to write and structure out a story in a series, it's having that understanding of, I need to be empathetic. I need to connect to this person and allow them to feel like they can shed any type of barrier and then tell their story. So.
That's incredible. Thank you so much. That is all the time we have. Yeah, Eric, this has been wonderful. Please send our deepest thanks to Lisa as well. It's always amazing hearing about the incredible work our alums are doing. You all now have Lisa's email. She was really gracious and allowed us to share it. So if you need to ask her any questions, feel free to. I was going to send my email and then relay things back and forth, but we don't need to now. So Thank you all for attending today, and thank you again, Eric, for this wonderful session. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
And
you.
stay safe. Take care.
You too. Thank you all.
Okay. Bye. Thank you.
Bye now.